Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. Boom, 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 boom. How do you know, sir? Great. I'm standing on a space landmine on one foot, listening to bad poetry by Baldric from Blackadder the Fourth. Actually, you know what? There's worse things in life. Carry on, Baldric. Oh, he's gone. Oh, great. Okay. It's just me then. Doctor, you need to stay where you are and do as you're told. No ifs, no buts, no interjections, no discussions. Just stay there and do as you're told. I kind of want Tony Robinson back. Maybe at least he could tell me about stuff from Time Team. Oh, isn't that gratitude for you? Fine. I know when I'm not wanted. I don't need this shit. I'm off to be Queen Victoria. See you later, bitch. Hang out with Pearl Mackie or Bradley Walsh or whoever. I don't give a fuck. It's all right, Doctor. I'll just put some. I just put some rocks underneath the landmine to stop it from doing anything. Wait, that wasn't a rock. That was a box of pretzels. Oops. Harry Sullivan is an imbecile. Boom. Ho, 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 so clever. Ho, 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 ho. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review of Doctor Who Season 1 Bad Wolf / Series 14 / Season 40, Episode 3, Boom, written by Stephen Moffat, who returns to write a official main series episode of the show for the first time since 2017's Twice Upon a Time, not counting the lockdown minisodes and novelizations and stuff, of course. First of all, before we begin, I've remembered to put my sunflower lanyard on this time from the start, unlike Space Babies, where I forgot and I only remembered when I was doing the sketch. So I was like, oh, put that on quickly for a little bit. And then the Devil's Call I remembered halfway, 2/3 through. But this time, keeping on, and as I've previously said in the past, it's because it's to defy people who had unwarranted backlash against that one actress in Doctor Who Series 13, where I can't remember her name, but she played Diane in Flux and Legend of the Sea Devils, and was also in a Big Finish audio box set with the 8th Doctor, Time War 5, Cass, but was born without a full left arm, so people were bashing that because she was considered a diversity hire. Fuckers. They wouldn't know a diversity hire if they even saw one. Yeah, so I'm battling those shitheads by supporting people like that actress by wearing the sunflower lanyard, even though it's more for hidden disabilities rather than visible ones. But, you know, fuck those haters. I'm supporting those who are disabled and physically and mentally and hidden disabilities, etc., by wearing the lanyard, because I myself have Asperger's. So supporting fellow hidden disabilities and visual disabilities. Right, well, with that recap out of the way, so, Boom. Funny enough, Stephen Moffat was the second former showrunner Rusty Davies actually asked to come back. He apparently asked Chris Chibnall to also, if he would be interested in writing an episode. And whilst it'd be a great idea to have all three showrunners have an episode each in the serial. Russell would have multiple episodes because he's the main head writer. But it'd be really great to have all 3 revival showrunners writing at least 1 episode for a series. Maybe next series, because Chris Chibnall turned down the offer, partially because he was writing his new book, which should be coming out in January, I believe. So he might have time for season 3. Which is a bit late for Moffat, if Joy to the World really will be his final script, which will be this year's Christmas special for next season, season 2. So Chibnall probably isn't writing one for that, or hasn't written one. So as great as it would have been to have a series with at least 1 episode from a former showrunners, it's probably not going to happen unless Stephen Moffat changes his mind about Joy to the World being his last one. But it's probably for the best it's not this season, because Chibnall has only recently just left. His final scripts were written in 21 and aired in 22, so it's probably for the best that he's having a bit of a break, much like Moffat did. At least in terms of the main episodes. Maybe he'll do some expanded media stuff later, or novelizations. But, he might come back for season 3, or maybe even a surprise season 2 episode. The additional benefit is that we're going to get 2 other writers for an episode, Kate Herron and Bryony Redman, for Rogue later in the series, although most of the rest of the series is written by Russell, so maybe 1 other episode could have been swapped out, but who knows. Maybe Space Babies. Okay, so, boom. Now, I wasn't the biggest fan of Moffat's final script, Twice Upon a Time, and I thought World Enough in Time and the Doctor Falls was a far superior, would have been final story, but Twice Upon a Time was there to fill in the Christmas 2017 schedules, and I suppose it was one last hurrah for the 12th Doctor. So, after 7 years away in terms of broadcast, or at least 6.5 in terms of broadcasts, how does Stephen Moffat return to the main series? Well, he had this idea of having a story where the Doctor was basically trapped in one place for practically the whole running time, almost the whole running time, and he was stuck on a landmine, much like the 4th Doctor Tom Baker did in episode 1 of Genesis of the Daleks in 1975, season 12 of the classic season series. And the idea was basically that the Doctor was stuck on this landmine for the majority of the episode, and they had to work a way around to get him off it before it exploded. And because it's a science fiction landmine, not a regular one like in Genesis, it's a sciencey, wincy weapon designed by a future interplanetary weapons designer, so sci-fi mine. It could cause, not only could it cause a body to basically be disapparated, as we see with one character earlier to show how dangerous these things are, with a character in the pre-title scene, but also with the Doctor being an alien, a Time Lord specifically, he could perhaps destroy the entire planet, or at least a good chunk of it, if he blew up. So the race is on to try and find a way to get the Doctor off this mine, or deactivate it without having to blow anything up. Long story short, they eventually do, but it does have a lot of twists and turns in a row. There's not really a straight direction to it. So the premise sounds pretty cool and intriguing, and I will give this episode the tension building up, especially in the first act, is great. The pre-title scene does a really good job of setting up the planet, introducing the supporting characters, and showing the effects of both a landmine and the ambulance thing, of how destructive of a force they could be, and destroying and killing the clerics. Oh, by the way, the clerics are back, the militant religious people introduced in The Time of Angels. Also, the weapons they're using are Villain Guard weapons, which firstly was mentioned in The Doctor Dances, Stephen Moffat's part 2 of Stephen Moffat's first main series script, not counting Curse of the Fatal Death. Empty Child Doctor Dances, the Doctor mentions he went to the Villain Guard factories, and then we see the ruins of those factories in Twice Upon a Time, and now we get to see some of those weapons in action with this, and the destruction they cause, as well as also the AI algorithm, and also that they're powered by money and the algorithm of lots of people dying, so lots of people buy the weapons, the wars continue. Yeah, this episode has quite a few things to say about capitalism and religion. Critiquing both in places like the capitalism with like the buying the algorithm has a number of people dying, a specific number, so that the clerics can buy more weapons, etc., to keep fighting this war that they're apparently trapped in, and the religious stuff is their faith in surviving and what they believe in and getting through, etc. So I think the episode does build the tension, especially in the first third, before Splice meets the Doctor and Ruby, at least, really well. I think it builds it up really greatly, and the tension with the Doctor and Ruby in that crater is practically exceptional. The tension building is really great. There's also great bits of tension later down the line with everything going wrong. Everything that could go wrong, apart from the actual final explosion itself, does go wrong. So yeah, this is one of those stories where anything that could go wrong does go wrong, except the worst thing, thankfully. So yeah, there's quite a bit of good tension building in there. However, I've got quite a few negative points for this episode that I'd like to get into, because this episode blew up with the fandom, much like World Blue Yonder, in terms of popularity. Everybody and their cat was going on about how amazing it was. Stephen Moffat had basically come back to save the show. Russell was being praised when he was announced as the returning showrunner, and it was amazing. It was Moffat's best script since Heaven Sent. Sorry, World Enough and Time Doctor Fools. And that it was basically a masterpiece. I, on the other hand, was sitting there having another The Daleks in Colour experience, where people were basically licking it all up and guzzling it all down, like having a really amazing time. And I was like sitting there thinking, kind of slightly awkwardly watching this one in kind of an awkward fashion, a bit like with Space Babies, but for different reasons. But the second viewing, I kind of got a bit more okay with it, and after this viewing, it's kind of, a bit more comfortable watching it. I'm not sure exactly what it was. Maybe it was the Moffatisms, and it was a jarring change of writing descriptions compared to the last 6 episodes, 7 Count Destination Skaro, which were all written by Russell T Davies, and the previous 5 years before that under Chris Chibnall's leadership, with him and his writers. So after 7 years almost away from Moffat, we also rewatched the Sherlock episode The Abominable Bride when it was on Drama sometime recently around that time. And I was able to notice the Moffatisms, as they know, the Moffat tropes, the Moffat style of writing that's became more apparent as his eras in both Doctor Who and also in Sherlock as well, as it went along, became more apparent and on retrospective can be quite noticeable. And I think because of those is when I was like able to pinpoint like, okay, this one does feel significantly different to what's come before quite recently, much like how Star Beast felt quite different to the previous few years under Chibnall, because Russell was back, it was his style of writing. And now again with Moffat, after 6 episodes of RTD, 7 counting Destination Skaro, and 7, or at the time, nearly 6.5 years away of Moffat from the show, with 5 years of Chibnall and his writers, and then 6-7 episodes of RTD again. So it was a bit of a getting used to again. I've gotten used to it a bit more now after a few more rewatches. But yeah, it was quite noticeable, and it sort of kind of felt a bit more uncomfortable at the time of the first viewing because of that as well. Just kind of for me personally. Again, second viewing, and more so on this recent one, which I've actually watched it not too long ago at time of recording. I'm more or less almost right afterwards recording this review after watching it. Yeah, a bit more comfortable, a bit more fine, and yeah, it's all right. I just felt a bit awkward on that first viewing. For some reason, watching it. But unfortunately, because of some of those typical Moffatisms, some of this episode does feel quite significantly different to RTD in terms of the characters. The 15th Doctor actually acts a bit more like the 12th Doctor in this one. No doubt he retains 15's personality still, but there is still quite a few lines that feel like they would have been suited better for Peter Capaldi's 12th Doctor. Not so much Matt Smith's 11th, definitely more... It's definitely more Capaldi-esque dialogue, but being spoken through Ncuti Gatwa's mouth and his expressions and gestures and so forth. But I think Ncuti Gatwa is able to portray a 12th Doctor kind of speaking through 15, and what like 15's maybe contemplating with 12 to help figure this all out. Like say the Doctors from the edge and the power of the Doctor, and the 12th Doctor's there and he's like, okay, I'm giving you some advice, but because of that, he's sort of also kind of influencing 15's personality at that moment. That's where I probably would stand with that. So 15 is basically bringing his inner 12th Doctor in this situation, but it kind of works with Ncuti's Doctor, and it still fits with his personality. As for Ruby Sunday, on the other hand, with Millie Gibson, as brilliant as she is, Ruby Sunday feels a lot like Clara Oswald in this story, so it feels more like this should have been a Series 9 episode rather than a Season 1/Series 14 episode. It feels like Boom was initially an idea planned for Series 9 and then got pushed to the side, or Series 8 maybe. So it does feel like this episode should have been with the 12th Doctor and Clara rather than 15 and Ruby. And because of that, Moffat writes them more like 12 and Clara rather than 15 and Ruby that we've known for the last 3 episodes. Like this dynamic that we've gotten used to has now suddenly been 12th Doctor and Claraized, which wouldn't be so much as a problem. It's just that it's very noticeable, and I have a feeling Julianne Robinson is either a major Moffat stan or she's watched a couple of Moffat episodes to get the directional feel, because this one definitely has apart from a few places, has a more distinctive direction difference to Space Babies. There's still a bit of the similar style as in Space Babies, but Robinson seems to have adapted her directing style to more towards a Stephen Moffat era episode rather than to RTDs, based on the writing, of course. But yeah, it seems that she has definitely watched quite a bit of Moffat era stories to get this kind of dynamic, similar to the 12th Doctors and Clara's, in this episode for 15 and Ruby. There is definitely quite a few points where Ruby feels a lot like Clara, even coming down to the hair being quite messy, giving me, and the swagger of her character, and telling the Doctor what to do earlier on with when he's on the landmine and she's got the casket. It was so much Clara vibes coming from her that and the character's from Manchester, as is Millie Gibson. Clara is supposed to be from Blackpool, and Jenna Coleman's from Lancashire, I believe. So there is quite a few similarities between the two in this episode that they kind of almost merge. The difference is that Millie keeps the character compelling in these scenes, that whilst, well, not offense to Jenna Coleman, who's amazing as Clara, but the character of Clara is getting on quite a few people's nerves at the time, of them finding her a bit annoying and controlling. And even today, there's still quite a few people who don't really get on board with Clara's character, despite Jenna Coleman's best efforts in the role. But with this episode, Ruby doesn't come across as too bossy, maybe outside of those bits earlier on in that first third, and continues to keep the level of charm of her character that allows it to not go into annoying territory that Clara went into sometimes. Also, later parts of the episode, she does sort of go back to more of her personality from previous episodes. It's just very odd that the first third was very much like, it felt like the 12th Doctor and Clara were back, but with new bodies, and maybe toned down a little bit more friendly, a bit more light-hearted. Not a criticism, but it just felt a bit odd. And then we get to the supporting characters, and oh boy, I kind of actually wish that outside of that pre-title scene, this was a Dr. Clara solo story. Basically Heaven Sent, but with the companion this time as well. Okay, first of all, we got Splice, who I believe was supposed to be written to be much younger to how she appears in the episode. I think they cast someone who's about 9 or 10 in the role, but she acts more like 5 or 6, maybe 7 at a push. She's fine in the pre-title scene, but she kind of gets a bit annoying and just kind of there as the episode goes along, and just like acting much younger than she actually should. And you'd think by the age she is, she probably would be smart enough to know what's going on. She sees the landmine, she knows that is a big deal, but you think she's smart enough to know her dad's died and it's an AI program and this is a big deal, and kind of maybe get out of the way of situation. But as I said, I think the character was written to be younger, and it definitely shows as we have a like 9 or 10-year-old, as I said, acting more like a 5 or 6-year-old, and it's just a bit off. It feels awkward. It doesn't feel right. Um, and I don't think the character has a mental disability. I think she was just written to be younger, but they cast an older child actress, a preteen, rather than a 5 or 6-year-old. And she doesn't really seem to understand the situation. Besides the landmine being big bad. But Splice is just kind of there, really. I mean, she's there for the typical Moffat kid character to appear. Although her relationship with her dad is quite nice, I'll give him that. It's quite nice, and it's good to see Moffat tackling a father-child relationship story this time around, as he did quite a few mother-child relationship stories in his time. Specifically, The Doctor Within the Wardrobe comes to mind. Yeah, his era has a thing about parents and children connections, which is all good. I think they should have either written Splice to be older and maybe a bit smarter and understand what's going on more, or cast a younger actress and then with one who could still sell the material, and it probably would have. I mean, the character's still not great, but it probably would have made a bit more sense. And then we have Monday Flynn, played by Varda Safar, who's going to be the next companion. Belinda, I believe her name is, but we'll meet her next season. Here she's playing Monday Flynn. So Varada is another actor/actress who plays a previous character before becoming a main character later down the line. So she joins the leagues of Colin Baker, Karen Gillan, and Peter Capaldi, the 12th Doctor, to that position. So Monday Flynn is a bit of a mixed bag for me. While she has some great moments at times, when we're reintroduced to her, because she's in the pre-titles, when we're reintroduced to her about 20-ish minutes into the story during the second act, she's pretty daft. She's a bit of an idiot. She's just kind of being a bossy soldier and shooting at the Doctor's arm to let him drop the urn, even though she knows it would kill him, until he actually tells her it would actually cause a massive big explosion, although he makes a lot of jokes before then, so I think he could have saved him some time and pain in the arm if he just said, by the way, this thing is going to blow a massive big hole in the planet if I blow up with it, so please don't shoot my arm to make me drop this thing. I'll give it to you as soon as we're off this thing. You know, there could have been other ways around it. Same with when the other Bishop shoots Ruby and he's like, oh, I didn't see her. And Ruth Martindale never tells him why she was telling Ruby to shoot her. There's just so many. I just think the supporting characters of this story, apart from John Francis, what's his surname? The guy who gets killed by the ant comes back as AI. Apart from him and maybe the other soldier guy in that pre-titled who got killed, the supporting characters are basically idiots half the time. And I don't know I feel pretty let down by that. I don't really like the supporting characters that much in this story. I mean, there's some progression for Monday. Sorry. There's a cute relation between her and another guy. It's briefly touched upon. Yeah, the characters, they don't really make a good second impression. First impressions are in the pre-title scenes, but after that, the second impressions, when they come back... boy. The middle of the episode is definitely the weakest part in terms of the story and characters. It's just so weak. Eventually, they do get Monday on side, and then, to get this ambulance thing away, which is what killed John. Whilst John Conrad was killed by the mine, but they try to get the ambulance away. And this scene does invoke some of Julianne Robertson's directing from Space Babies in this scene when Ruby gets the gun and it's shouting, "Combat, lovely combat, shoot, 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 shoot." That scene actually felt more like Ruby Sunday from Space Babies than Clara speaking through Ruby Sunday in this episode. So I think that was a bit where Julianne Robertson's vision from Space Babies comes back into this episode instead of basing her vision on Stephen Moffat episodes. The third act picks up the pace with the revelations and the race to save the Doctor and Ruby after she gets shot by Monday's, I'm going to call him the love interest, Caldo or something, I believe. Again, not really a fan of her never telling him, because he's like, oh, she was going to shoot you. And Monday never says, yes, so to distract the ambulance thing from the guy on the big mine thing that could cause a whole planet to or most of the planet to be blown up if it's allowed to do so. So we were going to distract it. It was only going to be like a small injury at best. She never says that, even though he's like, oh, she was going to shoot you twice. Again, this is why I'm not really fond of these supporting characters. This should have just been a Dr. Ruby episode after the pre-titles. I know it's got the whole religion and war commentary. Well, I suppose the commentary on the war and the capitalism is still there, but it's got to have the religious one as well. So it needs the clerics here outside of the pre-title scene to establish that as well. But the final act, at least, is a bit more interesting with the algorithm fighting back. It kills Caldo, and John's AI is presumed destroyed. It is a bit of a cop-out that they build up to that being him being apparently erased by the algorithm's safety guards, and then somehow it turns out they missed him. He's now become a virus within that algorithm, and instead of finding out information to make a case to turn off the weapons, he's now shutting down the whole system because he's apparently a very cross dad. So the climax does kind of come like, okay. I mean, I can understand that bit with him shutting down the algorithm because he's a really cross dad. But the fact that the algorithm apparently has killed him, and then it turns out they haven't, or he managed to survive and become a virus, or adapted to become a virus in its system. It's a bit of a like, you're building to tension that you're going to otherwise overturn within a minute. Maybe have the system say it's fighting this threat, and John and then his AI then wins. That could have made sense, but I don't know. It's just I question some of the decisions writing with this episode. Also, Ruby's out of the picture for a bit after being shot by Caldo, and there is a bit of a nice moment where they are trying to find her next of kin, and the system is kind of spluttering about with trying to find information about it. It's neatly adding to the mystery of Ruby's character, as is the reuse of the snow, which is used as a bit more of an importance to her life signs. But at the end of the day, Ruby is saved, the Doctor is able to get off the landmine, and John defeats the AI. John defeats the algorithm, and everybody lives happily ever after. Well, more or less. I mean, Monday doesn't get to be with Cloudo, but she looks after Splice, and John's AI will look after them. And the Doctor and Ruby then go off having adventures. We get that shot from the latest 60th trailers with the Doctor, the 15th Doctor, and with the kind of the brownish orangey background, closing his eyes and opening them again, that people said were cheated about because that shot wasn't in the 60th specials. My guess is this was such a cool shot they decided to use it in those trailers instead of having either a spoiler one or the reuse of the "can someone tell me what the heck hell is happening around here" bits from the other trailers, but with the fake background behind him. They wanted a bit more variety. So yeah, and yes, it is a cool shot, so good on them for using it, even if it's a little bit misleading for the 60 specials, but it does appear in a later episode, which I kind of thought maybe, which I'm glad about. It's this one, to be precise. Also kind of giving Moffat a bit of a recognition for the 60th anniversary special trailers. On the production side, according to the BFI Q&A panel when I went to see Doctor Who, The Happiness Patrol at the BFI, the first time, because funny enough, they had to redo it again because they showed the original version of the story the first time, but they wanted to show the special edition, so they organised it for the special edition version, and that happened just a few days ago. But the Q&A for the first one, with the original broadcast episodes, there was a discussion that was the Happiness Patrol the last studio-bound only story. They were kind of debating about Ghostlight, because there was a few exterior shots for the location, but most of it was like 99% of it was studio interior sets, etc. But apparently this episode has been cited as the first story that's completely studio bound, no location filming, since Ghostlight, or the Happiness Patrol if you count the exterior shots. But yeah, wow, we've gone like nearly 20 years of the revival, and every episode has had at least some sort of location filming up prior to this one. Like every single episode from Royals to Devil's Court has at least a bit of location filming, or they go to other buildings and films inside there, and those double up for locations in the stories. This is apparently the first completely in studio story that they've made, and to be fair, it kind of works for this small location. I mean, you could have gone to a quarry, I guess, but for a controlled environment, as we see in Unleashed, it works really well. The backgrounds maybe a little bit less so, but we don't really see it too much, so it's not too much of an issue. Apart from maybe at the end where it does look a little bit fake. There's only so far CGI and the visual effects can go to make it look realistic when you're using it quite a bit. That, or it's a testament to the practical set and prop designers for creating a more realistic environment that just is kind of surrounded by the more visual effects, or at least the visual effects make it look a little bit more spacious than sometimes using just a picture of the background. So production-wise, this episode gets A for effort, but not quite an A star. Okay, so to wrap things up, whilst this episode is much better than Twice Upon a Time and a far better story for Stephen Moffat, and it's great that he came back with this, and Joy to the World is looking pretty good as well from that first teaser released at Comic-Con. So this episode is definitely a big step up from Twice Upon a Time, and it's great he's come back with this. But I don't think it's the saving grace of the season. I don't think it's saving the show. I don't think it's the major highlight. And I have a few kind of problems with it. I don't really think it's that amazing. I can watch it easily enough now, and it's enjoyable to watch most of the time, as opposed to back when I first watched it. But I still have problems with it, and I still kind of get a bit frustrated with it. I don't think this is one of his best. I mean, it's one of the better ones, maybe. If I was ranking all of them, it probably would be, it would definitely be in the top half. Maybe top 20. Considering that he's got 50 stories, not including Curse of Fatal Death and Minnesota and stuff. The next one's Joy to the World will be his 50th story. It definitely would be top 20. 25 would be the halfway mark. Top 20 is a bit stronger. I don't know about any higher than top 15. Definitely 15 to 20 area. But I'd have to list every single one to confirm that. As far as I could be aware, it could actually be number 30. So, yeah, I do not think Boom was the major amazing story that everybody was going on about at the time. And I think some of that adoration for it has kind of gone down a little bit, like it did for Wild Blue Yonder and 73 Yards as well. But, yeah, I was never on board that much with it. And I've been liking it more as I rewatch it. But I still do not think this is the new masterpiece, the new Moffat masterpiece. This is no Heaven Sent. It's no World Enough in Time, Dr. Falls, Day of the Doctor, 11th Hour, Pandora Opens Big Bang, etc. It's not like those. It's really good, but it ain't some of the highlights from his era or any of his stories from RTD1. It's more. I'd say it's average good Moffat, like the great stuff. When we think Moffat has done a brilliant script, but it's not one of the absolute best, but we still really like it. It's one of them. At least it is for me. So I will be passing Boom at a respectable 8 out of 10. Yeah, so I think it's good, and production-wise, it's very good. And it does have a really good job with building the tension and suspense, but I can't get on board with this as much as everybody else did back when it was first broadcast, and I still have my problems and frustrations with this one. Hopefully, Joy to the World will be an even better story, and whilst I did notice some Moffatisms in that pre-title scene for that episode, I thought it was actually a bit more better with that. it kind of worked a bit better. And I kind of liked how 15's performance was now emulating more of the 11th Doctor in that, whilst he does 12 here, so he's kind of covering both main Moffat Doctors, not including the War Doctor, covering both of Moffat's Doctor with his own personality in the 2 Moffat episodes. And I also think that sort of works better with 15's personality overall as well. But that's based on that first 4-ish minutes of it's about a 5-ish minute video, but that includes the introduction. So from Nicola Coughlan, who's going to be in it as the guest companion. But for those 4 minutes of that clip, when the Doctor's on screen, it does look like he's sort of taking some inspiration from the 11th Doctor, like he does from the 12th Doctor here, but mixing it more with his character, and it kind of works a bit stronger there. And I think the writing is probably a little bit more kind of on balance there as well. But we will see when we get to Christmas how Joy to the World fares. And if it is Moffat's final script after all, then let's hope this Christmas special is better than the last one he went out with. But we'll find that out at Christmas. But until then, thank you for watching this review, and I'll see you guys next time for an episode that I found to be an absolute almost masterpiece at the time, maybe kind of a little bit less so on the second viewing. How do I feel about it on the third one? Stay tuned to next time when I review one of my favourite episodes of Season 1, Series 14. If it remains so for next time, 73 yards. See you guys then. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the Nicholas Payne YouTube channel.